He also faces a special allegation that he personally used a dangerous and deadly weapon, that being a knife. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty.
It felt like time itself stopped for a second. Father Rob gave me everything. Aaron Sorkin's trembling voice echoed through the air before the room had even settled into silence. The farewell ceremony for Rob Reiner was heavy with emotion, the kind of quiet that carries more meaning than words ever could. Then, through the rows of mourners, a thin, frail figure appeared and suddenly collapsed beside the coffin. It was Aaron Sorkin, Rob's most cherished student, the man who had learned life itself through his mentor's eyes. He wasn't laid out of neglect, but because pain and illness had nearly broken him before he could say goodbye. His face told a story of months spent in silence, tears swallowed, emotions buried deep. His speech wasn't perfect or rehearsed, but every word cracked open raw truth, shaking with grief and devotion. Even in the weakest moment of his own health, Aaron forced himself to stand, to show respect for the man who had shaped his journey and his art. That moment wasn't about fame or speeches, it was about love, the kind that endures beyond time itself. And maybe in that quiet goodbye, Rob Reiner received the most priceless gift imaginable, pure, genuine affection from those he inspired so deeply. They came, they wept, they whispered, "Thank you," over and over again. As dawn broke on December 23rd, the first light brushed the sands by the sea, the very place their parents once dreamed of resting peacefully. There stood Rami and Jake Reiner, side by side, carrying both sorrow and legacy in their eyes. Their hands were locked tight, hearts aching in silence that words could never fill. On that quiet Los Angeles shoreline, far from the noise of the world, the Reiner family gathered in one of the most intimate goodbyes imaginable.
No decision at this point has been made with respect to the death penalty. We have requested, and currently Nick Reiner is being held without bail. So special circumstances is a situation where one of the enumerated factors that lead to elevating in some ways a first-degree murder case to a special circumstance first-degree murder case occurs.
The ceremony was small, just close family, a few lifelong friends who had shared Rob's deep convictions, and colleagues who had walked beside him through decades of triumph and struggle. It was there, at that very stretch of sand, where Rob and Michelle had once told their children that when their time came, they wanted to return to the sea, to the rhythm of the waves, steady like a heartbeat, to the wind that carries both memory and peace. That wish, so simple yet so profound, was now in the hands of their two children to fulfill. The coffin rested gently on the sand, surrounded by soft white flowers, faded family photographs, and candles flickering in the cool ocean breeze. The waves whispered like old friends, comforting the brokenhearted, reminding everyone that the world keeps moving, even when the soul feels frozen in grief. Rami fought back tears, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Mom, Dad, the ocean will hold your memories, but I still can't let go." Beside her, Jake lowered his head, eyes red from endless crying. He looked out toward the rising sun, his voice quiet but heavy with pain. "We'll try," he said softly, "but I don't know how." The sea wind swept through their hair, carrying white petals into the horizon, like fragments of love drifting back to the water where it all began. As word of the ceremony spread among their closest circle, friends began to arrive, one by one. Rita Wilson stepped carefully onto the sand, her eyes swollen from tears, her voice trembling with emotion as she said, "They lived and loved with everything they had. I just feel grateful to have known them."
One of those special circumstances is called multiple murders. Here we have two, and it qualifies under the definition of multiple murders to allege the special circumstance in this particular case.
Her presence seemed to wrap the family in quiet warmth, as though she wished to hold them through their heartbreak. Moments later, Meg Ryan appeared, bowing her head before the coffin and gently pressing her palm against the bed of white blooms. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Oh, how deeply we'll miss him." Rob believed in love, laughter, and kindness. and he gave all of that to the world. For Meg, who had shared some of her brightest years working beside Rob Reiner, the loss felt like watching a part of her own youth fade away. A piece of history, love, and laughter slipping quietly into the sea. Then came Billy Crystal, Larry David, Martin Short, and Albert Brooks, the legends of Hollywood who had shared decades of laughter, long nights on set, and unforgettable memories with Rob Reiner. They stood side by side in complete silence, eyes glistening with pain, honoring the man who had shaped so much of their creative lives. Rob wasn't just a filmmaker, he was a friend, a mentor, and a force of energy that lifted everyone around him. Among the mourners was Jerry O'Connell, the boy Rob had guided since his first acting days. Jerry couldn't hold back his tears. He bowed deeply before the coffin, his voice shaking as he said, "It feels like I've lost a second father. Rob gave me everything." Each word hit hard, slicing through the heavy stillness. For Rami and Jake, it was both heartbreak and pride, proof of the love their parents had spread so widely. More familiar faces soon arrived, each carrying the same quiet sorrow. Stephen King, whose story Rob had turned into one of cinema's most beloved classics, approached the coffin with humility. He lowered his head and whispered softly, "Rest easy, Rob. You always believed in me, and I'll never forget it." His words drifted into the ocean air, echoing like a final letter to a lifelong friend. Then came Kathy Bates, her eyes red and tired, holding a small framed photo. One Michelle had captured during the Misery campaign, a moment frozen in time. She gently placed it beside the coffin, whispering, "Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Rob. You changed my life." Sitting down beside Rami, she held her hand tightly as memories of long dinners and endless laughter filled her mind. Rob would make everyone laugh until their sides hurt, while Michelle quietly snapped pictures, capturing moments that would later feel like treasures. But Rob's impact wasn't limited to Hollywood. His influence reached far beyond the screen. Among those who quietly entered the private coastal garden were Barack and Michelle Obama. Arriving without any entourage, keeping the atmosphere humble and deeply personal, Michelle immediately wrapped Rami in an embrace, her tears falling softly on the young woman's shoulder. Barack placed a comforting hand on Jake's back and spoke gently about Rob being more than a friend, a dreamer who believed in a better, kinder world. Together they sat in the front row, heads bowed, reflecting in silence. And just when it seemed the emotions couldn't rise any higher, the doors opened once more. There stood Aaron Sorkin, Rob's dearest protege. His frame looked frail, his face pale from exhaustion and heartbreak, as though grief had been eating away at him for days. He froze at the doorway, staring at the coffin for what felt like forever, his eyes searching for proof that this wasn't truly happening. Jake stepped forward to embrace him, his heart breaking for the man who had once called his father a teacher and guide. But as Jake's hand touched his shoulder, Aaron's knees buckled, and he collapsed right there in the aisle. The sound of his body hitting the floor broke the silence like thunder. He clutched his head in both hands, sobbing without a single word escaping his mouth. The air grew thick with sorrow, every broken gasp echoing like a cry from the soul. In that moment, it felt as if the whole world had stopped breathing. The news hit Aaron Sorkin like a lightning strike. Sharp, sudden, and cruelly brief. It came through a short phone call that shattered the world he knew. For a moment, he stood frozen, his mind refusing to accept it, his legs weak beneath him as if the ground itself had vanished. His heartbeat raced, his breathing turned ragged, and the shock was so severe that doctors later warned he was dangerously close to collapsing completely. He couldn't bring himself to visit Rob's home. That sacred space filled with laughter, heated debates, and endless lessons about storytelling and truth. The memories inside those walls were too heavy, too alive. Instead, Aaron stayed away, buried in silence, letting his heartbreak consume him day after day. For a while, he vanished from public view. No statements, no interviews, just an empty quiet that spoke louder than words ever could. Friends said he confessed to a few close people that he simply couldn't get up. The weight of loss was too much to bear. Rob had not just been a mentor or a collaborator, he was the man who had lifted Aaron out of obscurity, who saw his potential long before the world did. Losing him felt like losing the foundation of of his entire being. So Aaron did the only thing he knew how to do. He grieved quietly, in solitude, trapped inside the echo of his own sorrow. When the day of the funeral arrived, that silence finally broke. As he stepped into the seaside ceremony, his legs trembled so badly that he nearly fell again. But this time, he made it to the coffin, though his strength gave out moments later. Aaron collapsed to the ground, hands clutching his head as sobs ripped through the air, silent at first, then shaking through every guest in the room. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply stood still, sharing the unbearable grief that seemed to hang over the ocean itself. The wind, the waves, and Aaron's cries merged into one raw, sacred stillness. When he finally stood, he struggled to steady himself, his voice trembling but clear enough to break the silence. Through tears, he spoke, every sentence carrying the weight of a heart split open. When I heard that my teacher had passed, I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just stared into the emptiness he left behind. But when I learned this would be the final farewell, I knew I had to come. I had to say goodbye. Aaron stepped closer, his hands shaking as he touched the coffin, the last bridge between him and the man who had changed his life forever. His voice broke once more as he whispered, "Rob, you were my first teacher, my brother, my guiding light. You took the script of a nobody kid and said, 'We're going to make this movie, Aaron, and you're going to write even greater ones.' You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." Those words spread through the air like a wave of emotion, the sound of the sea mixing with tears and whispers all around. Everyone there could feel it, the immensity of what had been lost, the echo of a bond that no time could ever erase. Aaron's voice wavered as he spoke about the early days, those uncertain beginnings when he was just a young writer who barely knew how Hollywood worked. He smiled faintly through tears, remembering how Rob had opened not just a door, but his entire heart. "Step by step, detail by detail, you showed me what storytelling really meant," Aaron said, his words breaking mid-sentence. "Every script we wrote together gave me faith that I could create something meaningful. And now, I have to say goodbye to the man who taught me everything that mattered." His voice carried across the waves, blending with the ocean breeze and the quiet sobs of Rob and Michelle's children. When Aaron began speaking about Michelle, his tone softened even more. "She was the gentle light beside Rob," he said, trembling. "Always there, supporting, loving, creating warmth wherever she went. Michelle, you weren't just Rob's strength, you were light for all of us." Tears rolled freely down Aaron's face, soaking his shoulders, and not a single person on the beach could stay composed. The air itself seemed to still. His words wrapped everyone in silence, a silence filled with both heartbreak and beauty. You could feel how deep the bond between mentor and student ran, how much love and trust had shaped their shared years. Aaron recalled their wild debates, their backstage laughter, the small moments no one ever saw, like Rob slipping him notes of encouragement or cracking jokes during long shooting days. Each memory struck the guests like a wave, each one reminding them of their own moments with Rob, each one hurting a little more. Then turning toward Rami and Jake, Aaron's trembling voice softened into something almost fatherly. "My dear ones," he said gently, "your parents were extraordinary people. They loved fiercely, they lifted everyone around them, and they taught you what real kindness looks like. Hold on to those lessons, and never forget their smiles." Rami and Jake couldn't speak. They just looked at him through streams of tears, feeling the connection between their father and Aaron, a bond so deep it almost felt like family. When he finished, Aaron bowed deeply before the coffin, tears falling freely. His whisper was nearly swallowed by the wind. "Rob, Michelle, you'll live forever in my heart, in every word I write, in every story I tell." No one could hold back anymore. Faces turned, hands covered mouths, and tears spread like a quiet storm through the crowd. The ceremony continued, but every gaze followed Aaron. His speech wasn't just a eulogy. It was a lesson in love, mentorship, and devotion. His raw emotion became a kind of light in the darkness, a reminder that Rob and Michelle hadn't just lived, they had changed lives forever. As Aaron slowly walked away from the beach, Rami and Jake stood motionless, watching him go. The crashing waves carried with them an unspoken promise that their parents' love would continue through Aaron, through their friends, and through them. It was heartbreak, yes, but also something achingly beautiful. a proof that love and memory could outlast even the sharpest pain. When the final moments came, Rami stepped forward, her hand trembling as she rested it on her mother's portrait. Her whisper was barely audible. "Mom, I'll keep everything in my heart. I'll never forget you." Beside her, Jake bent down, placing his hand gently on the coffin. His voice cracked. "Dad, we'll try to live on. But this pain, it won't ever fade." Those words hung in the air like a fragile prayer. Not just a goodbye, but a promise to carry their parents' spirit forever. White petals drifted down from the bouquets, carried by the sea breeze and mixing with the salt in the air. Every sound, every crashing wave felt like a heartbeat echoing with memory. The beach itself seemed alive with love and sorrow, each ripple of water whispering stories of a family that had given their all. When the guests slowly left, only Rami and Jake remained, standing still, gazing at the coffin. The silence grew so deep it swallowed every sound. The two children stood at the edge of the sea, learning in real time what it means to go on without the people who once held your world together. The funeral, simple yet profoundly emotional, became more than just a farewell. It became a moment where love, memory, and the vast ocean blended into one. They knew, as they turned toward the rising sun, that their parents would live within them, in every breeze, every wave, and every quiet moment they carried forward. A heartbreaking, yet deeply sacred reminder of what family truly means. And still, one question lingered in every heart that day. What was it about the bond between Aaron Sorkin and Rob Reiner that ran so deep? What made this friendship strong enough to bring a man known for his sharp wit and composure to his knees in grief? In the ever-changing world of Hollywood, where connections often fade as fast as fame, their friendship stood apart, real, lasting, and rooted in respect. They first crossed paths in the early 1990s at Castle Rock Entertainment. Rob, as co-founder of the studio, held in his hands a script written by an ambitious newcomer, a stage play penned by a young man full of passion but still a stranger to Hollywood. From that moment on, their lives became intertwined, one guiding, the other learning, both leaving an imprint that time could never erase. Rob Reiner didn't just recognize talent. He saw a spark, a partner in creativity. When he decided to direct A Few Good Men, something powerful began. From that point forward, Rob and Aaron's paths became intertwined, two creative souls feeding each other's fire. The long months they spent inside Castle Rock's Los Angeles offices transformed them from co-workers into something deeper. Mentor, brother, and kindred spirit rolled into one. Aaron often said that Rob was the first person who truly listened to him. Not just to his dialogue, but to his wild, unpredictable imagination. Rob would sit for hours with Aaron and the legendary William Goldman, going line by line, scene by scene, exploring rhythm, tone, and meaning. Every conversation felt like a masterclass. It was during those talks that Rob, almost by accident, inspired what later became one of Aaron's defining trademarks: the walk and talk. Characters moving as they spoke, firing off lines like sparks. Sharp, fast, alive. That simple concept would forever shape the way television and film captured Aaron's words. Their first joint masterpiece, A Few Good Men, wasn't just a film. It was proof of what happens when two creative forces collide in perfect harmony. Aaron brought razor-sharp writing, full of energy and purpose. Rob gave it life through the camera, turning dialogue into living motion. Together, they created something electric. In Rob's office, they'd often sit face-to-face for hours, dissecting the tiniest details. The pacing of a scene, the flicker of an expression, the rise and fall of a single line. Through that process, they didn't just make a movie, they forged a bond. Writer and director, student and mentor, united by a shared obsession with storytelling that felt almost spiritual. Rob used to say Aaron's writing was like jazz, complex, intelligent, unpredictable, yet full of rhythm and heart. He often said how lucky he felt to direct such words, to give them visual rhythm without ever dulling their brilliance. Aaron, whenever asked about Rob, always spoke with deep gratitude. Rob didn't just bring his script to life, he taught him how to see ideas, how to make words breathe on screen. Their creative partnership didn't stop there. In 1995, they teamed up again for The American President. a witty, emotional story that would later feel like the blueprint for The West Wing. During those years, their friendship deepened even more. Rob often invited Aaron to dinner, and those nights would stretch into early morning. Two men talking about art, politics, and the world they dreamed of improving. Their connection extended beyond film. In 2004, they even worked together on political ads, standing shoulder to shoulder on issues they both cared about. Behind the scenes, they offered each other quiet, steady encouragement, always present, always supportive. Over the years, both evolved into giants of their fields. Sorkin became one of America's most respected screenwriters, while Reiner continued building a legacy of films filled with emotion and purpose. But beyond all the awards and success, what truly mattered was the trust, that rare, unshakable trust that fame can't buy. Rob once told a friend, "Aaron isn't just a great writer. He's someone I can say anything to without ever feeling judged." And in one heartfelt interview, Aaron admitted, "Rob always made me feel like I could become the best version of myself in my work and in my life." Those words said it all. Their friendship went beyond Hollywood. It was about belief, respect, and the comfort of knowing someone truly understood you. Even as life pulled them towards separate projects, their bond never weakened. They'd talk on the phone for hours, sending unexpected messages or sharing advice when one of them hit a wall. Rob followed every one of Aaron's milestones with pride, from The West Wing to The Social Network, often reminding people that the signature style so many admired was born from those Castle Rock nights decades earlier. Aaron, usually private about emotions, always made one exception when he spoke of Rob. He never failed to mention that Rob wasn't just a director who gave him a break. He was the man who opened the door to the world of cinema and made him believe he belonged there. Their friendship was never loud or staged for the cameras. It was quiet, genuine, built on mutual respect and shared purpose, the kind of connection that defines lifetimes, not careers. Rob Reiner and Aaron Sorkin weren't just two legendary names in Hollywood history. They were two friends who shared years of brilliance, humor, and human connection, leaving behind art that spoke straight to the heart. And as the world mourned Rob and Michelle Reiner, thousands turned their attention to that very beach. If not in person, then through messages, tributes, and memories flooding across social media. Fans around the globe revisited Rob's films, rewatched the moments that once made them laugh or cry, and realized this loss wasn't just about a beloved filmmaker. It was the loss of an era, a part of childhood, of artistic inspiration, of pure emotion. Comments poured in from everywhere. Invisible tears scattered across the digital world. One fan wrote, "I can't even begin to say how much Rob Reiner meant to my life. The fact that he passed with the woman he loved most. It's heartbreaking." Messages like that echoed endlessly, binding strangers through shared grief. And through it all, people remembered Michelle, not just as Rob's wife, but as her own radiant force. Tributes celebrated her warmth, her kindness, her quiet, creative strength. "Please don't forget Michelle," one fan wrote. "She was a light, an inspiration in her own right." Across timelines and threads, people shared photos, behind-the-scenes memories, and heartfelt stories of both Rob and Michelle, honoring not just two icons of Hollywood, but two human beings who gave the world beauty, laughter, and the kind of love that lives on long after the final curtain falls. The flood of tributes that poured in from fans was inseparable from Rob Reiner's incredible body of work. People across the world remembered The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, and This Is Spinal Tap, films that had shaped their childhoods, their laughter, and their view of life itself. One fan wrote through tears, "He gave us our childhood and our youth, and now, looking back, everything feels so fragile." Those words echoed what millions felt, that this wasn't just the passing of a filmmaker, but the loss of a piece of themselves. The sorrow wasn't only about saying goodbye, it was about realizing that something once vibrant and familiar had suddenly become memory. A memory that now carried both beauty and pain. Across online communities, Reddit, X, and countless forums, thousands shared messages that felt like collective mourning. People posted about the first time they saw Stand By Me, or how a single line from Rob's dialogue had taught them about courage, friendship, or love. One comment after another said, "We've lost a legend, but what he left behind will always live inside us." And the empathy didn't stop there. From America to Europe to Asia, fans posted photos, shared favorite movie moments, and told stories of how Rob and Michelle's kindness had inspired them. Many spoke about how their partnership, both in art and in life, symbolized the power of love and creativity that refuses to fade. They left together, One fan wrote softly, "It's beautiful and unbearably painful all at once." These messages became like waves, connecting strangers through shared heartbreak. Every tribute felt like a whisper carried by the ocean, uniting the Reiner family with a global community of admirers, bound by gratitude and love. As the funeral drew to a quiet close, the sea grew calm. Gentle waves brushed the shore, as though nature itself was bowing in farewell. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air, but amid that silence, one sound still lingered: Aaron Sorkin's voice. His eulogy had felt like a confession from a soul laid bare. No theatrics, no embellishment, just truth. The voice of a student saying goodbye to the teacher who changed his life. When the guests began to leave, a question seemed to hover above the ocean breeze. What now? How do we honor what Rob Reiner stood for? Do we have the courage to tell stories that matter? The kindness to treat others with the same warmth he showed? And the strength to live with heart, not ego? Maybe the answer isn't in the grand tributes or words, but in how we carry his legacy forward. In how we live, create, and remember. Rob and Michelle's impact doesn't end with the closing credits of their films. It continues every time someone chooses compassion over cynicism, honesty over convenience, creativity over fear. Thank you for staying through to the final lines of this story, one filled with love, loss, and the eternal mark left by two extraordinary souls. If you'd like to keep journeying through more stories of cinema, humanity, and timeless legacies, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so together we can keep their memory alive and celebrate the beauty they gave to the world.